Recording in progress.
Commissioners and members of the public. My name is Chadrick Smalley. I'm the Community Development Director with the City of Emeryville and am calling to order this meeting of the Emeryville Planning Commission in lieu of the chair, which we're going to select in a few moments. And I will begin by calling the roll in alphabetical order. Commissioner Chafe.
Here.
Commissioner Henme.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Here.
And Commissioner Wax.
Here.
We have a quorum of 5 members present. As I mentioned, and is first item on the agenda, our commission matters, is election of a chair and vice chair. This tradition has been over the years that the chair is the person with the most seniority on the commission, but that obviously is not binding. You can select whoever you want. And anyone can serve it as a chair, and anyone can nominate anyone else for the chair. Once you make those selections and once we vote it up and call the roll, I'll have you rotate into the appropriate spots on the dais, and then we'll proceed with the meeting with the chair presiding. With that, unless there's anything to add from council, thanks. I will just turn it over to the commission to deliberate, nominate, and vote. Thank you.
I'll stand for chair.
Sorry, you're nominating yourself?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
That's how it often goes.
Fine with me. That's fine.
I'll nominate Rod for vice. And I'll gladly make a motion for Commissioner Wax to serve as chair and for Commissioner Henme to serve as vice chair.
I'll second that motion.
Great, thank you. On the motion, for Commissioner Jordan Wax to become chair and Commissioner Rod Henme to become vice chair, I'll call the roll again in alphabetical order. Commissioner Chafe.
Aye.
Commissioner Henme.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
And Commissioner Wax.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. We'll take a quick pause here to put folks in their seats.
All right, now we are moving on to item 4, or time for public comment for items that are not explicitly on the agenda. If any member of the public here wishes to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing no hands, do we have any speaker cards?
No, and the practice now is to provide those speaker cards when they do come into the commissioners, but not to read them into the record.
All right, thank you. That will conclude public comment. Item 5, approval of action minutes for June 27th, 2024.
Chair, if I might ask,
Yes.
Staff is requesting a continuance on this item because we inadvertently, through a printing error, didn't include that in your packet, so we'll bring that back to you at your next meeting.
All right, then we are going to move on to item 6, the Community Development Director's report.
Thank you, Chair. Quick recap of council action since you last met. On July 2nd, the City Council approved the second reading of the ordinance limiting certain auto-centric and personal storage uses. That was recommended for approval by this commission in April of this year. The City Council also amended the master fee schedule to include a tobacco retailer license fee as part of the new ordinance requiring licenses for tobacco retailers. I mentioned that because the Community Development Department has implemented that ordinance in the last couple of months. On July 16th, The City Council held a study session to receive an update on climate action plan progress. The accessory dwelling unit ordinance updates were also on that agenda per this commission's June recommendation. However, because of public comment, we requested a continuance to September 17th, and that, of course, is on your agenda today to revisit for that recommendation. Events, we recently celebrated with a ribbon cutting the Quiet Zone project completion on August 16th. A lot of things are coming up that are quite exciting, some of them. AC Transit is in the process of holding public hearings for their Realign project. These are service changes that AC Transit is proposing. Those hearings are going to occur September 9th through 11th at various times, and there's both hybrid and virtual options available. The links to those are available on the city's website under the Newsflash section. In the link here behind us, you noticed the boards. I invite all the commissioners and members of the public to take a look at those. So what those are concept proposals for public art to be integrated in the 40th Street Streetscape project. And so these are the finalists that have been selected through a competitive process. And the next step is to select one or more of these folks' proposals and move it into the next step of design development and then construction. And there's some pretty interesting proposals out there. There's also a survey that you can take either on paper or online to register your opinions about those proposals. There's a block party at Bay Street produced by the Rotten City Cultural District this weekend, Saturday from noon to 8 and Sunday from 1 to 5. There's all kinds of stuff happening with this. There's a maker's market, there's live painting of murals, there's salsa dancing, and there's a group show closing party as part of that event, so I hope some of you get to check that out. The Placemaking in the Urban Environment series is happening at Big Daddy Community Garden on select Sundays, 3 p.m. on August 25th and September 15th, and 2 p.m. on October 13th. This includes performances and artist talks in the community garden. All of that is associated with the Cultural District program that has been ongoing and will be ongoing for the coming year. With that, that concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, commissioners? Are we doing public comments on these items? This is formatted a little bit differently.
You generally don't have to do public
Okay.
comment on items that we're not deliberating.
All right, moving on. The disclosure of ex parte communications, identification of conflicts of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I plan to recuse on item 8.1, which is the temporary relocation of the Stair Navigation Center, UP24-003. I have recused on items on this property in the past, as I live approximately 1,000 feet away from the property, and my APN number is 491081-1. So as soon as we get to the next item, I'm going to repeat that same thing and then step away.
All right, seeing no more, we will move on to public hearings, the first being 8.1. Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you. I'm going to recuse from this item. The APN on my home is 49-1081-1.
Is this on? Oh, it's on. Good evening, commissioners. I'm presenting for a use permit for the temporary relocation of Stair Navigation Center to 4300 San Pablo Avenue. The organization running this center, this program, is Bay Area Community Services, which is a long-running Bay Area community organization. The site is 4300 San Pablo at the intersection of San Pablo Avenue and 43rd Street. Is the location of our former city recreation center and has been for the last several years used as a temporary emergency shelter use by a variety of organizations. This is the San Pablo Avenue frontage and the 43rd Street frontage. So for a little site history, from August 2019 to December 2020, the site was used and operated as a family shelter by East Oakland Community Project. In 2021, City Council allowed Building Futures for Women and Children to use the site for ongoing office uses. And then in 2023, Commission approved a use permit for Insight Housing to operate a women's shelter, which is ongoing at the moment. There are also currently existing entitlements for a 68-unit, 100% affordable intergenerational housing project. It was approved administratively in December of 2022. EAH is going to be the developer of that project. They are currently still in the phase of acquiring project funding, and they do not anticipate breaking ground before the end of 2025. So BAX has been in operation since 1953, and they run the Berkeley Stair Navigation Center program. The program is rapid rehousing. They provide participants with a safe place to stay throughout the day while they work on their housing goals. They are currently looking for a temporary site for their program while construction occurs at their permanent site in Berkeley. The anticipated length of this use would be for 4 months. And it would start when the women's shelter ceases operations. So because we cannot have multiple use permits for the same site at the same time, we do include a condition of approval that once the women's shelter vacates the premises and ceases operations, this use permit would come into effect. We've also extended the length of this potential use permit to a full year. So it would end in August 23rd, 2025, since there's some moving dates and moving targets. In terms of operating characteristics, it would shelter 45 participants at any given time. Their enrollments are completed by appointment. There would be no lines or waiting outside the facility by participants. It operates for 24 hours a day and is is staffed at all times. No cooking would occur on site, and meals would be delivered, and they would provide on-site supportive services for residents. It will use the exact same site layout as the women's shelter, so the existing portables that have been on site, as well as the shower trailer that the women's shelter did install. They would also maintain the same loading area for meal delivery and laundry services, the same discard areas for trash, compost, and recycling. And there would continue to be no parking available on the site. So you have probably seen these before. These are, again, the same layout of office areas, common areas, and bedroom areas with the same number of beds as was previously proposed and approved for the women's shelter. And there's a site plan, so you can see the loading area on 43rd Street as well as the discards area. In terms of general plan and zoning, the general plan land use classification is mixed use with residential, same for the zoning district. There would be no changes to the floor area, no changes to the building height because they're not proposing any construction or development. Emergency shelters are considered a commercial and institutional use type, so no residential density, no development bonus. The parking requirement would be approximately 0 to 14 spaces. The applicant estimates that peak staffing would be about 6 people during the day. Some participants would have cars with them, but the exact number of participants with cars is not known at this time. We do include conditions of approval, also included in the women's shelter conditional use permit that indicate that parking would be accommodated on Park Avenue and then possibly on nearby commercial properties. So the findings for a conditional use permit are as follows. The proposed use is consistent with the general plan. The characteristics and design of the proposed use are compatible with the neighborhood. It's compatible with utilities and emergency response systems. It contributes to the general well-being of the community, and it complies with the planning regulations. Our recommendation is that you do approve this temporary relocation of Stair Navigation Center to 4300 San Pablo Avenue, subject to the conditions of approval. I have a couple of members of the Bay Area Community Services here with me today, and they do have a brief presentation for you.
I want to make sure I'm clicking the right area. Good evening, everyone. I am Jamisha Baker, and I am the Director of Housing with BACS, and we're just here to share some additional information with you all today about our program to support your decision-making on the temporary use of the site on San Pablo. Let's see, that's a little weird. Adjust, because I'm a little taller. So this evening, we will talk more about Bay Area Community Services, or BACS, and provide an overview of our organization. We will also talk about the STAIR Center and just provide more context on the services that are provided to community members. And then we will go more into program services, the impact of the services, and more detailed information on the program site updates and what our plans are to continue supporting our community members in the region. So just more details. I know Alyssa covered that we have been existing since 1953, and our organization started with Oakland churches and advocates that came together to create the organization. And it was the first of its kind in the Bay Area, and it was founded to respond to the growing needs of elders and people with mental health issues. And as we grew in size and expertise, we focused on the connections between mental health and the lack of affordable housing. And then in 1965, BACS was targeting rising homelessness around our communities. And since that time, we've steadily grown throughout the Northern California region to meet the rising needs of community members by providing behavioral health services and also housing solutions. And to this date, we've expanded services to regions in Monterey County, Sacramento County, Solano County, Alameda County, and also Contra Costa County to meet the growing needs of our community members in Northern California. So Berkeley STAIR launched in 2018, and STAIR is an interim housing program that's really designed to support the needs of single adults in the North County region that are experiencing homelessness. The program provides a safe place, as Alyssa mentioned, for community members to work on their housing goals. We are a little bit different than typical shelter programs in that we do not release community members back into communities during the day. They are allowed to stay on site and continue working with our staff and receiving much needed services on site throughout the day. We are a 24/7 residential program, which really helps provide those consistent wraparound services that community members need that have experienced chronic homelessness. The Berkeley location can support up to 45 community members at a time. Our current setup is more of a dormitory setup, and the reason for the need to use the temporary space is to go into the construction phase where we will have the site transferred over to pallet shelters, which are going to be individual spaces for community members to use during the time that they're enrolled in the program. So for our STAIRS team, just introducing folks to our team, the program manager is Dominic Anthony. We have 9 residential counselors that are on staff, and just to provide further details on how that works is the staff are not on site at all times, all 9 of them at least. We break them down by shift. We have a day shift, we have a swing shift, and we have an overnight shift. So there's always that constant presence to assure that all of the community members' needs are met and that we're also maintaining the safety and security of the services on site. And then we have 3 care coordinators that are on site during the day shift, and their responsibilities are to work in tandem with our residential counselors to develop housing plans, to reach out to landlords, to prepare our community members for the housing navigation process through services like coordinated entry, Section 8, different housing subsidies, and as well as partnering with landlords to develop housing opportunities for our community members that will go and utilize our rapid rehousing funds, which is a time-limited rental assistance program. We also have a employment coordinator on our team that really helps get out there to build relationships with employers and training programs to help with housing sustainability. And they are on site off and on throughout the day to meet with our participants and to support them with resume preparation, interview skills, setting up different things that they may have questions about, and just really meeting those employment and training needs on site. And then on the senior leadership team, you have myself, Jamisha Baker, as mentioned before, and you also have the Associate Director of Programs, Gary Tia, who's also here with me this evening. Gary can wave to you all to let you know he's back there. Let's see. And then just to talk more about services, because I know there are often questions about programs such as STAIR and what services we provide to community members. The STAIR Center, again, gives all of these services on site to folks. We saw a lot of challenges many years ago in programs in the past is that folks had to go to different places to get what they need, and we're really big on making sure that services are on site and available to folks in real time, and they can work with any of our staff, including myself, to help meet their needs. And the services are really broken down into category. We first can touch on housing support, and it has to do with coordinated entry housing navigation, really focusing on that barrier removal support that is required for folks who really experience homelessness, some of them for many years in their lives, focusing on things like housing search and partnering with landlords, full scope support for leases, flexible financial assistance to develop creative ways to help end the homelessness of our participants, move-in financial assistance, furniture assistance, because we're getting them set up for their new home to make sure that they're comfortable, and really also focusing on family and friend reunification for folks that may need to go back and do shared housing as an option to make it more long-term sustainable for them. The next piece is the holistic support, where we're really focusing on connections to medical care services, substance use services, helping folks with things like clothing, therapeutic services and activity connections with that we do on site, as well as our partnerships with our housing resource centers and our wellness centers in the region. And then the behavioral health referral support, just really making those connections to getting the services that folks need that may have been unmet when they were living in unsheltered situations during the time that they were homeless. And then benefits application support. That includes everything from general assistance, public assistance programs, Medi-Cal, CalFresh, Social Security, anything that you can think of to really help them increase their income outside of earned income sources such as employment. The other part, again, we talked about earlier is the employment support, job application, resume support, barrier removal for employment. If we need to assist with maybe paying union dues to make housing sustainable, we will do that to ensure that they're able to keep up with those rental payments. And then also making those connections to employment openings that we are aware of in the region, attending job fairs, and sometimes we may even transport our partners to job fairs so that there's less of a challenge in getting them there, and then transportation assistance for employment-related services. And we do provide meals on site. We have them delivered just once per day. They are delivered by a company that works with local restaurants and makes it affordable. Is it stopping me? Or something weird happened with the setup? I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was on a roll, and Jordan's looking like, what's happening? It was like going into a presentation abyss there. Thank you so much. Yes, that's where we were at. Perfect. Okay, let me speed it up a little for you so that doesn't happen again. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. We do have the 1 meal per day delivered to the site from an organization called Club Feast that works with local restaurants. We also work in partnership with local nonprofits, churches, for meals that are donated, but we really leverage our wellness centers and our housing resource centers to get our participants out into the communities and really leverage those resources for self-sufficiency around meals. And then again, the CalFresh application assistance. And most importantly, I know a lot of us don't think about this, the social connections that we all thrive on individually when you've been unsheltered. Sometimes there are communities that folks have connections with, but we really strive to ensure that they're building those connections in communities that they will be living in, and really just making sure that they have places to go, to, develop new connections, and also developing connections on site by having themed events, having celebrations for holidays, maybe having a special meal for times of the year when they may be away from their loved ones and their friends is also really important to us. And then trying to spread awareness around holding cultural events to teach our partners about each other's cultures, to really help make the living challenges in congregate settings a little bit more easier, because we know more about each other in that way. And then just to talk about the impact of what we are doing for the program. Since the STAIR Center launched, we have housed 317 community members with permanent housing destinations. And as an organization, BACS has supported over 2,820 households stay in housing with our homelessness prevention program. We've also supported 1,000 community members with permanent housing. And for our mental health services, we've served over 3,173 community members with behavioral health crisis support, and instead of accessing those emergency care options. And so just to kind of share the reason that we are here presenting this information to you is that STAIR, again, is going to be shifting to a pallet shelter effective the winter of 2025. Construction is slated to kick off the fall of 2024. During the construction period, the site will be closed to staff and community members. This will mean that this much-needed resource will no longer be available at that site to community members, and if we do not have another location to help house this program, that resource will be lost, and there's already a very limited amount of resources for shelter and interim housing in the region. That can always be checked out by reviewing the PIC counts and the CLC resources for the region. What we are asking is that the program is relocated to Emeryville at the site on San Pablo to ensure that our unhoused community members in the North County region continue to have access to this interim housing service and these resources to help end their homelessness. We will be scaling back on the number of folks that we will transition over to the temporary site if it is approved, and it will be up to 28 community members, which is a little less than what we're currently serving, but that way it also helps accommodate the space at the site, the temporary use site. And that is it. It did not go back out on me again. Thank you so much for your attention and your time this evening, Planning Commissioners. If you have any questions, we're free to here to answer them for you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Seems like a great organization. First question is about timing, because as you're probably aware, the facility won't be available during fall of '24 like your presentation showed. So is there flexibility on your timing?
We've been flexible on this for so long. That is not an issue. We will do what makes sense and what we're able to do. We're also trying to explore other options, but we understand the current situation with the provider that's already housed at the location. So we are flexible in that. And plus, we're dealing with a lot of the process for construction through the city of Berkeley. There's been delays on that because that's how it is sometimes. So we've been really flexible and just working with them on that.
Also not knowing weather conditions.
Yes.
'Cause that might also push the project back as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. How many people do you usually have during the day in staying at the place? Or in this new location, Emeryville, how many do you expect you would have?
Yeah, so the majority of our individuals work. So we have a good portion that work there. We're probably around 50%. So if we're gonna have 28, you'll probably see about 14 to 16 people staying on site.
But 28 staying at night?
Yeah, 28 at night.
I see.
Depending on their work schedules, because
Yeah.
some people work at night and then they'll sleep during the day. But typically 14 during the day, maybe 22 at night, 24 at night.
And how long do people usually stay at one of your communities?
Yeah, on average, we have between 4 to 6 months, between 4 to 6 months is what it takes for us to house somebody. So that's getting all the documentation that they would need, get them a job, whatever supports they stand in need of. A lot of times it's basic things like getting a driver's license, finding where their birth certificate is, et cetera. But it takes us normally on average 4 to 6 months.
Any other questions? All right, then, it is 7 PM, opening this to public comment. See any hands in the chamber? Seeing none, I'm closing public comment and bringing it back to the commission. Any comments, commissioners?
I'll just make a quick comment. Thanks very much for the thorough explanation. I learned a lot about your organization. I think what you are doing is absolutely necessary, admirable, and I would be happy to have Emeryville support the work you're doing.
I concur, and I think it's a great program and a good use of the site. The one thing that I was concerned about was in the staff report, I believe, was about a community meeting held after the approval. And to me, that seems an odd timing instead of having a community meeting and getting that input before having us deliberate about it.
So I don't believe there was a community meeting for this item. That is a leftover from the original use permit when the shelter was first established. At that time, I think the staff report refers to that community meeting. But for this, for the stairs, there was no community meeting.
Any other further comment from my fellow commissioners?
Just Chair, I also support the work that's being done by BACS and think that's would be a wonderful thing for Emeryville to support this endeavor.
All right, well, thank you so much for the presentation. This is certainly necessary work, especially with everything that has happened recently at the federal and state level. People need a place to go, and I would be proud to have one of these facilities, even temporarily, in our community. So with that, I'm going to close item 8.1 and move on to 8.2, update to the accessory dwelling units.
We're looking for a motion.
I'm sorry.
for,
Oh, I'm sorry. This was an action item.
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit application for the proposed temporary navigation center, subject to the conditions of approval.
Second.
Thank you. On the motion by Commissioner Chafe, seconded by Commissioner Johnson to approve the conditional use permit application. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chafe.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez is recused. Vice Chair Henry.
Aye.
And Chair Wax.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Now closing item 8.1 and moving on to 8.2, update to accessory dwelling unit ordinances. Welcome back, Commissioner Martinez.
I'm back. I am presenting to you tonight on an amendment to the update to the accessory dwelling units ordinance, which you had previously reviewed and made a recommendation on in June. So just a timeline of subsequent events. So the original update was you adopted a recommendation on it to City Council on June 27th. On July 15th, City Council received a public comment on the draft ordinance with 3 items on it. One about reducing restrictions on building height to allow more flexible 2-story ADUs, on allowing either private or common open space, and on increasing the threshold where fire sprinklers are required. Based on staff recommendation, City Council continued the item so that we could review and make revisions as needed. We found that the revisions are substantive enough that they do require Planning Commission to review and approve a new recommendation. So the two proposed changes we are making are as follows. One to maximum height. In our previous iteration, we proposed a flat maximum height of 20 feet for detached ADUs and 25 for attached ADUs. Based on the public comment, we are changing it to something a little closer to our current ordinance, which has a massing plane. It starts at 30 feet in height and then it steps down at the rear lot line. So we'd maintain the same. So the maximum height would be 30 feet, and that would step down to 20 feet for detached ADUs and 25 feet for attached ADUs at that rear 4-foot setback. For open space, we did not make any changes in the last iteration. Based on the public comment, we are going to allow for applicants to select either provision of common open space or private open space for each unit, subject to our private open space requirements to make sure it is adequate for use. We are not making any changes related to fire sprinklers. That would require changes to the building code, so not in the scope of work here. So this is the language we're proposing an amendment to. So it would be 30 feet starting, maximum height of 30 feet, starting 15 feet from the rear lot line, stepping down at an angle to 25 or 20 feet, depending on the ADU type. And then for usable open space, an applicant can still provide 200 square feet of common open space, or alternatively, they can provide a private open space for all units with at least 200 square feet of aggregate area. This project is exempt under Public Resource Code. And then the findings are the same as the previous one, as follows. Proposed amendment is consistent with general plan. The amendment is necessary for public health, safety, and welfare. It has been reviewed in compliance with CEQA, and the property is suitable for a change to the zoning maps. So we do recommend that Planning Commission approve the resolution recommending that City Council adopt the proposed amendments to the planning regulations. And I do have the rest of the material from the previous meeting if you'd like to refer back to it.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, I will open this to public comment. It is 7:07. If any members in the chamber wish to make comment, you have 3 minutes. Raised hands. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to member deliberation. Do we have any comments from commissioners? Seeing none? Oh,
Oh, I was just going to say that I don't think it was any of our intentions to be more restrictive in terms of what we currently allow with our recommendation. So I'm grateful to the member of the public for catching that, and grateful for staff for revising the recommendation before we send this to City Council. So I think that's the trend with what's happening with ADU regulations and laws, is that we're trying to be more expansive about what we're able to build in light of our housing crisis that's now being acknowledged by everyone at every level of our government.
Wanted to support that, and I wanted to thank this resident Ala Agafanov, who brought these comments up because it's to the service of the city. And frankly, I regret that I didn't catch the thing about the height reduction. Should have, frankly, because a 2-story building does need that kind of height with the slope roof. So next time, be more aware and try and be more critical of what we're all doing here. But anyway, but thankfully, she brought it up, and it's a very good change.
any further comments?
I just had one comment on the open space. I also think that that's an excellent recommendation to allow that private open space. I think it makes, the individual ADUs much more livable to have that. And especially if you've got pets, it's nice to have a place for them outdoors and not have to be part of a common area.
Seeing no further comment, do I have a motion?
So moved. To approve.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Great. On, on the motion by Vice Chair Henme, seconded by Commissioner Martinez to make the recommendation to the City Council to adopt the changes to the ADO ordinance. I will call the roll. Commissioner Chafe,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Henme,
Aye.
and Chair Wax.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, moving on to section 9, item 9.1, Powell Street Plaza Master Sign Program Study Session.
So this is for a sign permit for the Powell Street Plaza Master and Sign Program. Powell Street Plaza located approximately between I-580 and Shellmound Street, Powell to the north, and the Sonesta Hotel to the south. You can see there. This is just a site layout for you to get familiar with the site. For a little background on it, this is an existing shopping center with 5 buildings, service parking, and currently 25 individual tenant spaces. The tenant spaces range from 1,300 feet to over 2,700 square feet. This shopping center has been around for a very long time. There was an original master sign program approved at the site in 1987. It included signage standards for tenants, as well as specifically west-facing freeway signs. So freeway signs facing I-80 specifically. In 1991, the original master sign program was amended to allow additional freeway facing signs up to 20 in total. They also set a maximum aggregate square footage for this freeway-facing signs as well. The city at this time does not have a complete record of the original master sign program or the 1991 amendment. This has created a lack of consistency and clarity around a number of items. The ones that are most recurrent is related to the number and sizing of freeway-facing signage, the overall maximum tenant signage allotted, and general design standards for cohesive design on the site among individual tenants. This has resulted in longer review times and confusion for staff, applicants, and property owners as to what is in fact entitled at the site at any given moment. So this project would create a new Powell Street master sign program that supersedes those previous sources and would improve staff's ability to review the project expediently, or individual tenants expediently. It would formalize the existing site signage within the master sign program, and it would create standards for signage for both site and tenant, would define permitted sign materials and illumination, allowable sign types and dimensions, and would again allow tenants to dictate the specific content within those parameters. So this is both the existing and proposed site signage on site. There are 2 monument signs and 2 tower signs that are existing on the site. The applicant is proposing some directional signage as well to be placed in the surface parking lot. The tenant signage would include wall signs, blade or hanging signs, and these specific freeway-facing signs. Up to 29 in total. So here's a brief table, calculations for site signage on site. The grayed out areas are for existing signage. Here are the locations of those both existing and proposed site signs. And then I'll go briefly through existing signage on site since it's going to be incorporated into this master sign program. So this is the first major monument sign located at the corner of Powell and Christie. The secondary monument sign located at one of the driveways along Christie. One of the tower signs, so the tower signs are incorporated into the massing of the existing buildings, but then incorporate both site signage as well as individual tenant signs, which are still included in the site sign calculation. And then the second tower sign as well. The applicant would also be proposing 4 directional signs on site. They would be about 5 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide, less than a foot thick, double-sided, unilluminated, and they would be located within the surface parking lot in existing curbed areas with some vinyl text on it indicating the location of specific tenants. So for tenant signage, each tenant would be allowed a maximum sign area of 1 square foot per 1 linear foot of frontage. They would establish a minimum sign area of 60 square feet and a maximum of 160. So certain tenant spaces may be allowed more signage than the 1-to-1 ratio, and some may be allowed less. The maximum aggregate sign area for the site, according to our planning regulations, is around 4,300 square feet, just to keep in mind. And then the sign types that would be allowed would be wall signs, 1 per tenant frontage, blade or hanging signs, 1 per tenant, and freeway facing signs, up to 29 in total. So this table, which is also included in the master sign program itself, is basically a tabulation of each existing tenant's total frontage, as well as the sign area that they would be entitled to. And so you can see the frontage total, again, is 44,346, but the actual sign area that the proposed sign regulations would permit is substantially less than that. It's 2,640 for the tenants as they're currently laid out. This is just to get us reoriented to the site very briefly. So for wall signs, again, 1 would be permitted per tenant frontage. There's not discrete dimensions associated with them, but they could be allowed up to 75% the width of their frontage, up to 70% the height of the fascia that it's attached to. They could be internally lit, face lit, or halo lit, and would be required to include a dimmer. And individual tenants could provide corporate logos and colors as needed. Blade and hanging signs would be allowed up to 1 per tenant. The signs could be up to 10 square feet in total, and would be required to have at least 9 feet of clearance underneath them for passerbys. They could be unlit, they could be internally lit, and there would be custom shapes permitted. The freeway-facing signs are, again, wall signs facing I-580. They would include allowances for tenants that do not have freeway frontage, such as the Trader Joe's or Burger King, to have wall signage along that freeway-facing frontage. Apologies, it's not 1 per tenant, but there would be a maximum of 29 allowed in total, at the discretion of the property manager to distribute among their tenants. Major tenants that are over 15,000 square feet would be allowed 75 square feet of freeway-facing signage, and all other tenants would be allowed up to 40 square feet. To be clear, all of this tenant signage would still be subject to the 1 square foot to 1 linear foot frontage. So while that is the maximum permitted, it would be at the discretion of the tenant to determine how they are actually allocating their maximum sign area. There would be additional standards included to ensure that all freeway-facing signs are properly aligned with one another and with the architecture of the buildings. We would specify that major tenant signs are only permitted in specific areas to create the correct proportions. They could be internally lit, face lit, or halo lit. And you can see here the blue dashed line indicates the areas where freeway-facing signs would be permitted and the exact number of signs that would be permitted on each of these building faces. The master sign program also includes elevations indicating where specific signage may be allowed. So you can see that major tenants who may have larger freeway-facing signs would only be permitted in areas where the massing is appropriate for that to occur. Looks like. All right, so the findings are to promote visual harmony, to relate well to the building and be compatible with architecture, to be in character with the surrounding area, to have an aggregate sign area consistent with the planning regulations, that the permitted signage is no more than necessary, and that it complies with Chapter 5, Article 16 of the planning regs. You would also have to make design review findings that the design of the project is consistent with the general plan, that it conforms to the Emeryville design guidelines and any other applicable criteria, and that it is of high design quality that is compatible with the surrounding area. So I ask you to consider, does the commission have any feedback regarding the proposed master sign program, and do you believe you would be able to make the required findings? I do have the design team as well as a member of the property management team available here. And I believe they would like to introduce themselves briefly.
Hello, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Ted Luthen from Ross Luthen Creative. With me is my business partner, Gordy Ross, and Brianna Fox, representing Regency, the owner of the and manager of the center. First, I'd just like to thank Alyssa for the great presentation. Really kind of hit all the high points. It's been a good process that we've been working through. And just to give you a little bit more background, so what I think one of the unusual things about this are the minimums and the maximums, and I just wanted to kind of explain how we came by that. So historically, the previous master sign programs divided tenants into major, semi-major, and minor tenants. And those tenants were allocated signs by how many square foot of lease space they had. So major tenants were allowed up to 160 square feet. Minors were allowed 60 square feet. And so that's kind of where those minimums and maximums came from, because we wanted to create something that worked within kind of the boundaries of what was previously approved and what our tenants kind of accommodate now. So we thought, okay, if those minimums and maximums worked for them, it'll work for us moving forward. The minimum came about because there are some very narrow tenant spaces that don't have a lot of frontage. So we thought, you know, some of these things can be 15, 20 feet wide. That's where the minimum came from. And the maximum came from, you know, Marshall's worked within 160 square feet. It's a big space. That seemed like a reasonable maximum. So that's kind of where those things came from, just to give you a little background explanation of why we arrived at that. So it weren't numbers that we just pulled out of our head. And then just like to touch on the freeway-oriented signs. We're proposing 29. And why we're doing that is, right now I think we have 25 tenants. But sometime in the future, you know, nobody really knows. We're trying to build this MSP to live a while, and changes happen in the retail environment. So it is possible that 20 years from now, 15 years from now, Marshalls get subdivided into smaller spaces. And so those new smaller tenant spaces would probably like to have freeway-oriented signs. So that's why we're proposing the 29, and that's also why we're limiting freeway signs on each frontage. So you'll see that on the Marshall space, I think we said maximum 4 tenant signs on that space. Right now, there's really only 1 on a very long frontage, but conceivably in the future, that could get demised differently, or Old Navy could get demised differently, or Ross could get demised differently. So we're trying to provide a program that works within the 1 square foot per linear foot, but also will kind of outlive the current existing condition in case things change. So that's all I really had to say. Thank you for your time, and like Alyssa said, we're available for questions. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions?
Oh, thank you. Would I be correct to assume that all of the existing signs would fit into the proposed master plan?
Yep. Yeah, that was another reason to kind of work with that 60 minimum, 160 max, is to accommodate all the existing signage.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Hemney?
Yep, there was on page 4 and 5, it was said that there's only one side of those tower signs that have 4 sides in one case and 2 sides in another is counted in the sign area. Why would that be so? Why would you only count one side?
We are counting one side of the tower signs. I think we counted all the sides of the
So I,
tower
Oh,
signs.
there's a note that
Is there-
says only one side, the area of one side is counted. I could probably,
so from the planning regulations perspective, considering the width and depth of those signs, we would count all frontages. So that is something that we can revise in the next round of comments.
Or did we only include one side? on those?
let me
Could be.
find that comment. I did read it, that only one side of 4 is counted, so, okay.
I thought we counted all the towers. We only counted one side of the monument sign, which is just kind of a two-sided sign, but I think we counted all the surfaces of the towers. And if we didn't, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll ask one other question. On the freeway side, in the re-entrant corner, on the southwest corner of Marshall's, you're indicating the west-facing face to have the sign. I guess I would consider thinking about using the south-facing face, because as you know, the face perpendicular to direction of travel is the one that you really see.
Right.
And particularly in that re-entrant corner, the corner itself blocks any view from the north for sure. And so maybe that, right now your diagram only shows the west face. You might want to add the south face as well.
I think the south face would be covered as a frontage, kind of a tenant frontage, would cover the north, south, and the east side of that building. And not really a,
Oh,
it
just
wouldn't,
the re-entrant corner. If you could pull.
oh, just turn that freeway thing, just to turn the corner
If you
there.
could pull up the site plan.
Yep.
um,
Yeah, I think I see what you're seeing. Yeah, basically what is it, the southwest corner of Marshall's?
Yes.
Yeah, turn
southwest
that corner.
and the south-facing part of that.
Oh, there we go.
The diagram where you had the dashed line showing where the
Freeway signs.
the freeway signs would be, yeah. There it is. So,
So you're talking about,
well, actually, you are showing in this drawing, you are showing the dash line. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
that surface
south face. In the
oh, yeah.
previous set, it wasn't shown. It was,
I see, yes, you're right, because on the site plan I'm looking at, it doesn't turn the corner. Got it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's probably a more effective sign.
true.
Any other questions from commissioners? All right, opening it up to public comment. If any members of the public wish to comment, please raise your hand and you will have up to 3 minutes. Seeing no hands, closing that and reopening the discussion. Any comments from members?
Thank you. This has been very helpful. I just wanted to raise an issue around pedestrian and bicycle access to this shopping center and with regard to signs. So the shopping center is not easy to access in any manner other than car, in my opinion, and we fight through it. We would love to patronize some of the stores more than we do right now. But there's just not a lot of internal access across the parking lot that's very safe, especially for bicycles. And so what I wanted to bring up is that there's an existing sign, M2, which is very close to an important crosswalk between Trader Joe's and Burger King. And I want to make sure that the sign program that we approve protects the line of sight there so that it's very easy to see pedestrians, people using wheelchairs especially, that use that crosswalk to get to a curb cut and ramp that goes up to Trader Joe's. And I think right now it's okay, but it's not ideal. It's a tricky intersection because there's a light there. There's a lot of cars that come in from Christie and make a right turn to go into the shopping center. And already there are some sort of angles where somebody could be starting to cross from east to west, and the sign could potentially obscure them if they were in a wheelchair, not, 6 feet tall. So it's something to consider as we are designing the attributes of the signs and what could potentially be there in the future. The other thing I wanted to raise is that some of the directional signs could potentially have implications for line of sight as well. It's a little hard for me to tell right now in the diagrams, but for example, D2 and D4, because they're on islands, if they become a solid structure that precludes drivers from seeing around a corner, it could potentially make accessibility even worse there. So, maybe not a lot of pedestrians, but bicycles, I don't know, we could think through it a little bit, but I just wanted to raise that aspect.
Any other commissioners?
I did find the reference. It's on page 4 of the proposal under tower sign. It says maximum sign area, 400 square feet maximum each side. Maximum sign area can be divided among multiple tenants. Only one side is counted in sign area. Maybe that's just an ambiguous line or something, but anyway, okay, that's page.
Yes, thank you. I was curious about that as well, because it would severely undercount the sign area and not seeing as much of a reduction as it purports.
That's, that's also on page 2, under the monument sign. It says only one side is counted in sign area as well there. And that's two-sided, so.
All right, any further comment from my fellow commissioners? Seeing none, I just want to say that the points brought up both by Vice Chair Henme and Commissioner Chafe are pretty important. My experience with this particular area is someone who's accessed it primarily as a pedestrian. I occasionally take my car there. I actually kind of find that it's a little challenging to navigate regardless, including by car. And so if you have increased visibility issues for pedestrians who are already navigating kind of a difficult situation, and the drivers are already navigating kind of a difficult situation, that can be a recipe for some tragedies. So I definitely think that needs to be looked at, as well as this total. And with that, seeing no further comment, thank you for your presentation, and I'm going to close this item. Moving on to item 10, Planning Commissioners' comments. Any comments?
Thank you for stepping up, Chair.
Yes.
And Vice Chair.
Thank you. Well, seeing no further comment, let's adjourn. The time is 7:33.
Recording stopped.